Gary and Diane Heavin are the founders of the largest fitness chain in the world, Curves International. Now retired, Gary helps fly food, missionaries, and physicians to areas in need around the world. He also produces Christian films. Recently, he wrote, executive produced, and starred in the film Missionaire. The story is about relief workers who face the Mexican cartel to protect their mission and their lives. I watched the film last night, and I really enjoyed it. It seemed a little bit personal for you. Why did you decide to do this particular film?
Well, I recently retired from a long career of influencing people. And I really prayed a lot about what God would use me for in this next season of my life. And my wife and I took a year just to listen. And we found that we had an opportunity to influence the culture in a positive way by showing the Judeo-Christian values as an effective way to live. The trusting God was an effective way to live. We created a movie, Missionaire, that tells a story of how faith and values can overcome adversity.
This was your first time acting and your first time writing a screenplay. You co-wrote the screenplay for the movie. That seemed to come so naturally for you. Why do you think that is?
You know, the co-writing the script part was really interesting because as a CEO, it was always my job to mesh all the voices into one common story. And having done that hundreds of times over a long career, that's really all script writing was doing, taking the voices of the individual characters and meshing them into one story. But what was surprising was I didn't know I had that skill. But you know, God takes these experiences and then He prepares you in ways you don't even think about. And I think a lot of people would relate to that. They found themselves in a job or a circumstance that they somehow had been prepared for over time. And that's just evidence that God has everything under control if you let Him.
He really does. Now, you just mentioned CEO, so I want to talk about Curves for a minute because you were the CEO of Curves, also the co-founder of Curves. You know, one thing I found interesting in life is that a lot of people have dreams, but they have no clue how to get there. You're a self-made man who came from humble beginnings. How were you able to make that transition from college dropout to founding this multi-million-dollar business?
You know, you missed the part about being bankrupt.
That too.
You know, I was a young man, opened my first women's gym at age 20. At 25, I was a millionaire, and at 30, I was bankrupt. And people wonder how that could happen. But it was really quite simple. The first part of my career, and you use the term self-made man, it was about me. And God had a better plan for my life. And He had to take away everything. I had to suffer sufficiently to become teachable. And that's where I went through the process of losing everything. And that was God kind of wringing the pride out of my life so that I could be usable. And the new birth of my life, where God had my full attention, the first thing He did was introduce me to my wife and my partner who gave me the stability and the focus that I needed to do anything worthwhile. And together, as partners, we founded Curves. You know, Curves became the fastest growing of any franchise company in history. It's the largest fitness franchise in the world with locations in 90 countries. And this was so beyond reality that it's God's signature. And so He's been able to bless millions of women in 90 countries and not just helping to live healthier, longer lives, but also have an opportunity to provide for their families as franchisees.
You know, somewhere I read that you said Curves, just like this film, is really a mission for you. How do you approach something like this? You know, a lot of times we separate business from mission. Someone may be watching who, you know, they have a heart to do something great, but they don't know how to make the connection between the two things. What would you say to them today?
If you would be influential, if you would be an effective leader, it's not by being served, but by serving others. In fact, you serve your way to the top. And so when I changed my approach to business from being about me, being self-made, to being about them, to serving others, I became blessable, and I became a very effective leader. And those are principles that everyone in your audience can take to the bank. So when you begin to make decisions about how to run a business, well, telling people the truth and doing what you say builds relationships in teams. And in our situation, we built a team of millions of members because they could trust what we had to say.
We talked about the bankruptcy, about you losing everything. And even as a child, your mother died when you were just 13. You had some setbacks. How has that same principle really worked in your own life?
I was a little slow to learn, but God allowed me a process to where I realized that if I were to let go of me and if I were to listen to Him, I had a much better plan in my life than I could ever come up with. And so I think that's the great lesson, that God's there and He's available. And through Christ, by the way, which is the key, okay, we have access to that relationship.